Hi everyone, my name is Marjorie Gunder and I'll be your producer and co-host for today's webinar. Welcome. We still have people joining us, so let's give them another minute or so before we start. And before we dive in, I'd like to take a few minutes to cover a few housekeeping items. So this webinar is being streamed live on LinkedIn using StreamYard. It's simple to use, and if you have any questions during the session, just type them into the comment box on your screen. I'll address them during the presentation or in the Q&A session at the end. And the session is also being recorded, and we'll share a link to the recording afterward. So no worries if you miss anything, we've got you covered. Again, feel free to send your comments and questions through the LinkedIn comment box at any time. And without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Dario. So take it away, Dario.
Thanks, Marjorie. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dario Priolo, and I'm the founder of JK Research. And I spent about the last 25 years as a chief marketing officer, working for organizations that sold very high value solutions to sophisticated buyers. So these were B2B solutions, typically in professional services, B2B software, life sciences. These were 6 and 7 figure types of transactions that could have anywhere from a 6 to 12 month sales cycle. Very high value, lots at risk. In addition to that, I've been involved in about 13 M&A transactions over the course of my career on both sides of the table, buying and selling, working for private equity, buying companies, selling to private equity, working for strategics, making transactions and acquisitions, selling to strategics. And then about 10 years ago, I started consulting to clients. I've kind of gone off and on between being a full-time CMO and being a consultant. But when I'm consulting, oftentimes it's with founders to help them grow and eventually sell their business. I come in and serve as a fractional CMO in many situations. And I'm also a sales trainer. So I really love sales training. And sales training is really helpful for me just to stay sharp, stay in front of my people and my clients, and really brings them a lot of value.
Great intro, Dario. And can you elaborate on your work in life sciences?
Yeah, so I think what's kind of unique about my work in life sciences is that although I do work with pharmaceutical and biotech clients, many of the clients that I have worked with over the years and many of the clients that I'm currently working with are actually selling services and products to pharma. So that's kind of the nuance here. I have a newsletter. It's called Selling to Pharma because my clients, they sell, again, product, services, solutions into big pharma, small, mid-sized pharma, biotech, and med device. So maybe they're a consulting firm, they're a training company, they're a software company. They're selling other types of life sciences technology that, like stem cells, for example, that support other types of programs that these pharma and biotech companies are running. And so they're selling into pharma. And by the virtue of the fact that, I'm there helping them develop these strategies and execute these strategies and do a ton of experimentation, I really have, I think, some unique insight into the market for selling to pharma.
So like your recent survey of pharma buyers.
Yeah, so this was actually the subject of my last webinar, and I know some people attended that. But most of my clients right now at this time of the year, or probably like in September when I had the webinar, they were kind of going into their strategy planning and budgeting for 2025. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I really, really believe in is that it's so critically important to understand your customers, right? To understand how their world is changing and how you potentially fit into, their world going forward, their strategies. So I did this research with my clients to really help them understand how pharma companies buy, and understanding buyer behavior so that they can then align their selling behavior and their selling strategies with the way that these companies buy. Hmm. So for those of you who have not had a chance to attend the webinar, you can just scan this QR code. It will take you to the recording of the webinar. And you can watch it, but I'll be referring to a number of the key findings here in this presentation.
Awesome, Dario. So now let's dive into today's conversation.
Sure. So let me just start by sharing a personal experience. This happened back in May, and I kind of took the plunge and I bought a Tesla. It was my first EV. And so I had a BMW, was about 10 years old, had 25,000 miles on it, and it was starting to kind of cost me money. And those cars, like once things start breaking, then they can be very expensive to fix.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just got a little bit tired of it. So I thought, well, maybe let me look for possibly getting a new car. And I ended up buying this car, and I have to say, like, I really loved it.
So those cars, in my opinion, are great. And walk us through your buying process.
Yeah, well, it really started when my neighbor bought a Tesla. So he bought it about a year ago, and I know he's raved about it. And he always, was very excited that he didn't have to put gas in it. So he never, wasn't stopping at the gas station anymore. And, 50, $60 here, a couple of times, a month. He was, that was particularly exciting for him. So I think, his enthusiasm combined with my sense that my old BMW was becoming a money pit motivated me at least to be open to replacing it. So then I did a little bit of online research, as you would expect, and I noticed that especially in May of this year, Tesla had this incredible incentive that they were offering. They were trying to
Mhm.
move these cars, and I thought, oh, okay, well, if I do the math on it between the incentive and between the government rebates, it's kind of like, well, this is like, a really, potentially a really sweet deal.
Yeah, that can certainly be a motivator. So what happened next?
Well, I never driven one, so I went to the dealership. Then we're lucky; I've got a dealership about 10 minutes from me. So I went to the dealership and I drove one, and it was like a really interesting driving experience. It was very, very different. The car that I drove had the self-driving feature, which was absolutely mind-blowing. I was skeptical at first, but it's like, oh my god, like this is just so innovative, and it was just a really, really cool experience.
And did you decide then to buy?
No, I didn't. I didn't buy it on the spot, although I was very tempted to. Uh, when I have these urges to make impulsive purchases like that, especially big ones, my wife tends to pull me back a little bit and says, "Hey, like, pump the brakes, dude." And so I did that. I did a little bit more research, and then I went and test drove a Volkswagen EV. I test drove a BMW EV, and I also looked into things like the charging network. I know that's a big deal, and range
Mhm.
anxiety and whatnot. But ultimately, I landed on the Tesla, and it really wasn't even close.
So it's a good story, and it sounds a lot like how I bought my last car. And I did lots of research. I drove a few, and I bought the one I expected to buy. So there were no surprises there.
Yep, not surprising.
But what does this mean for selling to biopharmaceutical and biotech companies specifically? What's the connection here?
Well, it really starts by understanding their buying process and how you can better align your marketing strategy and your selling efforts.
Mhm.
It really starts when a need is acknowledged. And typically there's a trigger event that puts the process in motion. So that's the thing. What's really important when I'm working with my clients is I really want them to understand, how sort of the need evolved within their customer, right? It's not that automatically they're saying, well, we're going to spend, six figures on something kind of on a whim. Like there's always something that's going on when you kind of dig deep, right? And we do a lot of, we call it voice of the buyer interviews. So we're trying to, really get underneath the covers of like what was really going on in the organization that sort of triggered the need. And oftentimes there's something like maybe there was like mergers and acquisitions, right? Maybe they got financing. Maybe there was new leadership. There's always something happening that says, oh, okay, well, now it's time to really, look into this and potentially, now we recognize that there's a need and we want to go forward. And then what typically happens is that a committee gets formed. Okay, so this was one of the big findings from the research, and that we always knew that biopharma companies they're risk averse, right? They're regulated, and although they can be very lucrative businesses, they're still risk averse. And what's happened now, even things like with the Inflation Reduction Act and some of these other legislations, and with the election that's unfortunately now behind us, um, you know, uh, we heard stories about these, the biopharma companies becoming even more risk averse. And one of the ways that kind of comes to life is in the way that they buy. So there's always committees, right? It's always buying by committee. And even for something like under $10,000, you can expect there to be three people involved in that decision. And the larger the transaction, the more people get involved. So, once you get over $500,000, there can be 12 people involved. I mean, it's
Mhm.
it's a very, very elaborate decision-making process. And then what happens is that, so again, with all these people involved, the need is acknowledged. And then what happens is that a committee typically gets formed. Okay. So now a person typically will get tapped to lead, the sourcing process, if you will. Now that is not necessarily, the most influential person or the most senior level person. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes it's a mid-level person. Sometimes it's a person, maybe they have a purchasing and procurement department, right? And they're leading this, but they're doing those. They're leading a process, and there are other people that are involved in influencing that decision. So that's another thing that's really important to understand the buyer, because sometimes my clients will say, well, it's the lab manager is the decision maker because they're the person I'm interacting with. But it's like,
Mhm.
well, maybe not, right? Like, I mean, it's
Right.
really important for you to understand who are the other players involved in that decision, because what happens now is that there's this what's called a day one list. So when the committee gets formed, typically, people are sitting around a conference table or whatever, they got on a Zoom call and say, okay, we're the committee that's going to be involved in making this big purchase for our company. Like, let's just kind of go around the horn here, and like based on what we need to buy or the problem that we need to solve, who have you used in the past? So even like amongst the committee members or other people in the organization, oftentimes senior level executives, they'll say, well, like we have to solve problem X. Who's done that before? Who's solved that problem before, right? And so with that, there's this what's called a day one list that gets created. Okay, there's not a lot of rigor that's gone into this process yet, but it's just people kind of sitting around a table saying, hey, we have a problem. Who solved it? Who has experience with it?
Mhm.
And who do you know that can help us? And typically, again, like, you're going to get maybe 3.5 to 4.5, or whatever, 3 to 5 companies on that day one list. Okay,
Mhm.
and you'll see here that's going to be a really important list to be on, because then what happens is that, okay, fine, then now the committee's formed, you have your day one list, but now whoever is kind of leading the procurement process is going to go out now, and they're going to now go onto the internet, and they're going to start doing their searching, they're going to identify, and they're going to vet other vendors, right? Maybe they'll go to their own network, they'll do online research, maybe they'll look at, maybe they've got a relationship with one of the analyst firms like Gartner or Forrester, and they may ask for some recommendations. Oftentimes they'll go to a trade show, right? It's like, hey, like, we need to buy this software. So there's this big trade show here, and we know, like, there's going to be, 20 vendors that sell that. A lot of the training shows are like that.
Mhm.
And that way we can kind of go around to all the booths, and we can talk to people, kind of in one fell swoop. And the other bonus is that, we get a little bit of a boondoggle, right? Because we're going to go to the trade show in San Diego or Las Vegas or someplace cool. And
Mhm.
but it's convenient for gathering information.
Yes, and in some formal cases, they may gather all their requirements into a document and send a request for information to these vendors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, especially depending on like the size of the organization, oftentimes, large publicly traded companies have, whatever, it's mandated, right? They've got formal procurement processes that have to be followed. But
Mhm.
just know that there's a lot of box checking that happens. There is a parallel process that's happening, which is around, hey, who have you worked with and who are you comfortable with?
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. And then what happens is that the team will get together, and they'll winnow this list down. So maybe you'll go from the day one list, which will have 3 to 5, to now someone's taking this on as their job, and they expand that 3 to 5 to maybe it's 10 to 15, right? That they're going to kind of do a more comprehensive look across the market. But then what's going to happen is that they're going to gather all that information. They're going to come back together as a committee, and now they're going to come up with their short list, right? So now you're going to go back from,
Mhm.
you go 3 to 5. Now you're going to go to maybe 10 to 15. And now from that 10 to 15, you're going to break that down probably now to, whatever, 5 or 6. Okay. And the 5 or 6, now you're going to go and do a deep dive. You know, maybe there's going to be a formal request for proposal. Who knows, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and this usually involves contacting the vendor, scheduling a pitch, and getting a demo or a proof of concept, and then answering any questions.
Yeah, precisely. And this is probably going to take place over several calls, may take weeks or even months. And as a vendor, it's really exciting, because these are opportunities that you get to put into your funnel, right? I mean, you got Salesforce open, you're putting these things in. Everyone
Mhm.
thinks they're the front runner, right? I mean, it's really exciting because ultimately salespeople have numbers that they need to hit. And you're thinking, okay, great, I've got this biopharma company, and they kind of need what we have, and man, like I'm going to put my best foot forward here and try to win this business. Going to forecast the revenue, and woo, isn't this going to be exciting?
Of course, and though there will only be one winner.
Yeah, that's right, Marjorie. Um, so in the final stage of the buying process, that's where the buyer selects their preferred vendor, and that's where negotiations begin in contracting. And sometimes, they won't narrow it down to one vendor. Maybe they'll have two or three vendors, and they'll kind of play them off against each other. But there's always a preferred vendor, right? And at the end of the day, that's kind of who they want to go with. But whatever, they have a fiduciary responsibility to be negotiating the best terms. They can play that off against each other, and ultimately, whatever, land on the best possible deal for the organization.
Yes, and then of course they need to take delivery of the product or implement the solution.
Yeah, and so this is the end-to-end buying process, really, when you think about it. But what's really mind-blowing, and this data came from Forrester Research, but it also tracked with my own personal experience, and that is there's about a 90% chance that one of the winning vendors is going to be a day one vendor. So think about that.
That's crazy, but when you think about it, the vendor will take weeks and probably months, hours and hours of people's time to make a decision that they could have made in the first day.
Yeah, exactly. But they're risk averse, and they have a duty to do the due diligence. And even it's to confirm what they knew all along. There's this concept called confirmation bias, right? So, there is bias in their decision-making process. But ultimately, they're the ones that are going to be held accountable, for making the right decision. And they have to, there's a real emotional side to it, right? So, I mean, there's a rational side and an emotional side, but that emotional side plays a huge role in the final decision that they make.
Just like when you bought your Tesla.
Absolutely. At some point before I made my final decision, I knew that was the car that I was going to get. But, I just felt that I owed it to myself to go through the process. And at the end of the day, I was very pleased with my decision. So that's why this is the topic of this webinar, right? Like, that's why it's essential to get out in front of the buying process to win before they buy.
So how do they do this exactly?
Yeah, so I mean, I thought you'd never ask. Yeah, let's go back to the data. So, one of the questions we asked in the survey was really for buyers to identify the marketing tactics that resonated with them. And in this graph here, the blue bars represent SaaS. So we surveyed SaaS buyers, so software buyers, and we surveyed pharma buyers. And what you see here is that the marketing tactics that resonate with SaaS buyers are often very different than those that resonate with pharma buyers. Pharma is still a very heavily relationship-driven business. And it's interesting that, I mean, they're risk averse. There's a tremendous degree of trust that's necessary in order for these organizations to buy, right? I mean, you think about it. I mean, they're heavy research focus, right? I mean, although there definitely is an emotional side, but again, it's interesting because it is not rational. The relationships matter, right? But the thought leadership matters. So it's all these things that you need to bring together. Very different from say software. Like a lot of people, when you're looking on LinkedIn and some of the best practices, software is typically a few steps ahead of life sciences in terms of marketing sophistication. And you'll see tactics like cold calling and cold emailing and all this kind of stuff. Well, the survey tells us, and what I see play out across my clients is that that really doesn't work particularly well. And the things that you see here in the green bars, these are the things that work.
And building trust and relationship takes time and effort.
It absolutely does. I mean, that's the thing here. Like things like cold calling and cold emailing. Like again, like there's no quick hit here, right? There's no silver bullet. There's no low hanging fruit here. Like you gotta really work for it. So things like, again, like you think, oh, well, maybe I can build a list and I can cold email them, or I can, use LinkedIn emails, and whatever. Like you can certainly try that. And I have plenty of clients that say, hey, Dario, can we try this? And I'm like, okay, well, I know what the outcome's going to be, but sure, if you want to try it, we'll try it. And it's the same result all the time.
So you mean the hundreds of gurus on LinkedIn that claim they will get me 30 appointments in 30 days?
Yeah, I mean, don't bet the farm on that, right? I mean, I can almost guarantee you that will be a complete waste of time, and it's incredibly annoying. So what else is really interesting, though, is that when you think about just the importance of being on that day one list, right? And when you think about where a lot of marketing investment happens, it actually happens afterwards. So things like, again, like, it all depends on your business, but for the most part, things like Google Ads, search engine optimizations, vendor review websites, like although it really seems like the right thing to do, like more and more now, they don't work. And the other thing that I've seen is that things like Google Ads have gotten so expensive, right? If you think about a Google search engine results page, there was a time when there were like, kind of paid ads all over that thing. Well, now, I mean, or you could get, you could do search engine optimization, and you could get, maybe like a free link on the top page above the fold. Well, now almost all of Google is paid. And what they're trying to do is to get people to pay the most money possible for that top placement, and they really do favor the large brands. So it's really been interesting to see the evolution of Google from, oh great, like put out good content, optimize it for search engines, and you had a shot. Now it is almost all pay to play, and the SEO heavily favors large brands. And even now, like with AI search coming out, like if you looked at a Google search engine result page now, like they're competing with these AI search engines, and now like Google, they're using that top part of the page literally to give you an AI answer when you Google something, right? So again, it's just further making it difficult for some of the smaller people, and now sort of like the SEO game is all about, well, how can I become like the AI sort of answer of choice, and it's becoming even more difficult for smaller brands. So it's just becoming very, very difficult. But the moral of the story here, though, is that so much money is spent on being found, right? Oh my God, I just, when someone Googles me, I want to come up. But in reality, there's a very good chance that they've already got their day one list. Like they're Googling you. They want to put you on sort of like, you're not on the top, 3 to 5. You're going to be on like the 10 to 15. And those 10 to 15 are the ones that are going to get cut, down the road here. So that's the challenge, and I see it every day. I see it with my clients, and oh my God, it's really, really difficult.
Now, there certainly are other reasons for investing in your online presence, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, what's really interesting is that the whole notion of brand, right? Brand is becoming so critically important. But what we're going to see here, like especially like the beauty of focusing and being focused on a niche market like biopharma is that you can be a small company, but you can have a great brand. If you do things the right way, if you play your cards right, you don't need to blanket the world with millions of dollars in television advertising or internet ads or search engine optimization. You don't need to do that. You can go in with a very surgical approach and get known, right? Get known. So that really starts to tie into, the strategy here, for again, it's winning before they buy, right? And there are 5 things that we're going to cover here that you really need to do. 5 things that will give you an unbelievable advantage. Okay. And they don't even really cost a lot of money. But they take a lot of effort. Okay. I don't want to make this sound easy. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work, but it will pay off. So those 5 things here. First of all, understand your buyer. Second, build your network. Third, build your brand. 4, provoke needs. And then 5, stay omnipresent. Okay. So let's start to drill into these here.
Okay.
So understanding your buyer is really crucial to winning before they buy. And this includes things like really having a very clear definition of your ideal customer profile, really having your buyer personas very well identified. For each buyer persona, understanding their pain points and the relevant pain points that you solve. So again, it's not just like, oh, well, here are the pain points. No, it's the relevant pain points. Then the trigger events. Again, there are always trigger events, right? Again, most people don't know what they are, but they're there. And when you understand the trigger events, then you can get out in front of it and position yourself as, whatever, an expert in solving the problems that those trigger events sort of, bring to life. And then, of course, understanding the buying process, understanding all the key players involved, understanding your decision-making process. And like the better you understand that, the more you can get out in front of it.
So I bet that the trigger events and buying process are often overlooked. Is that right?
Yeah, they are, Marjorie. I mean, it's funny. Like, again, it's people don't really think about it that much, right? It's like, okay, well, like people think about loss reviews. Well, I want to do loss reviews, right? And because I want to find out why I lost. Well, the problem with doing things like loss reviews is that you're trying to contact somebody you're trying to get feedback from somebody that didn't choose you, right? They chose a competitor. So they really don't have a lot of skin in the game in terms of helping you. Like they want to be polite, I'm sure. Like they want to give you the courtesy of at least, like you put a lot of time and effort into your proposal, and I want to make sure that, you don't feel like you've been done, dirty or anything like that. But you rarely get good information from a loss review. And that's why, I do these things called voice the buyer interviews. And those voice the buyer interviews are just super, super informative. So rather than trying to, get a debrief from somebody who didn't choose you, my advice is look at somebody who chose you, right? If somebody chose you, they have a lot of skin in the game. They have a lot of incentive to provide you with good feedback, right? Like your partners at that point, or you should be at least working toward that in your relationship. And what I found is that like they've gone through the same process as somebody who didn't choose you. That whole process that I showed earlier, like, they had their day one list. They did their search. They evaluated everybody. They spoke to everybody, and ultimately they landed on you, right? So this is where you can really, again, like you're building a relationship with a new customer, right? And understanding from them, like what triggered the need. Describe your process. Who was involved? Why did you consider us? And then why did you choose us? And so I mean, it's really fascinating, the insight that you get.
Yeah, that makes sense. And your new customer has a vested interest in helping you to improve, and they should hopefully be excited about their new relationship and initiative.
Absolutely. Like, and again, like these are large purchases, and you're probably going to be joined at the hip for a long time. Hopefully you are, right? Because that's a sign of success.
Right.
And yeah, they should, whatever, then they should want to give you good information. And the best way to do this is over Zoom. So when I do voice the buyer interviews with my clients or for my clients, we'll do it on Zoom. Everyone's used to Zoom now. And then what's really important is to record it, right? Like have your questions that you want to ask to really understand, everything here that's on the right side of the slide, but then record it. And what you want to do is, we call it voice the buyer because you want the unfiltered voice the buyer. Okay. You want to hear how they described their needs in their own words. And again, like what I found is that people try to do things like surveys. It's like, oh, well, we'll just, we'll do a survey. We could send them do a survey monkey, and we've got, 6 questions. Well, when you do a survey, you lose all the nuances. You can check boxes and whatnot, and you can get some kind of general, maybe direction. But what's really, really valuable is, again, it's that voice the buyer. It's hearing them understand the pain, right? Hearing them understand their process and who was involved and why they were involved. And then ultimately, like why they considered you and why they chose you. And what's great now is that with Zoom, like you can get the transcripts, right? And then with the transcripts, then you can start running them through these different AI engines, and you can really get a lot of insight from whatever. Like before, you would maybe have like an overwhelming amount of information, right? Well, now with AI, you can do a ton of analysis on a lot of information and boil that down to really critical insight.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And the other thing that I found is that like customers love it. Like they love it when you ask them for whatever, like not only how are we doing or, but they just love connecting with you. So like, especially like if you're the CEO of a company and if you call a customer and say, hey, like, welcome, it's great that you're a new customer. Would you mind spending 30 minutes? I just wanted to ask you a few questions. Like they absolutely love that. They think that's the coolest thing. It's like, oh my God, like the CEO wants to talk to me. It's like, wow, like we just hit the jackpot.
So let's now talk about building your network.
Yeah. So building your network is just so critically important. Like when you're selling high value solutions, B2B solutions to really sophisticated buyers, and when relationships are crucially important, like how do relationships get started, right? I mean, like it's really interesting. If you think about, now I'm the worst person to talk about this is the dating world because I've never done this. I met my wife the old fashioned way. Uh, but whatever, a lot of relationships now happen online, right? A lot of personal relationships happen, whether it's, I don't know, eHarmony or these other ones that are out there. Uh, and so, it's just really important for you to be building your network. I mean, as a professional, right? Many of us are professionals. If you're a CEO, if you're a salesperson, it's so important to build your network. And building your network is not only a function of size, right? I mean, people think, oh, I've got like 5,000 LinkedIn connections. Isn't that wonderful? Well, yeah, I mean, 5,000 is better than 500. But then what you need to do is there's a quality aspect of it. And the quality aspect is really about the match to your ideal customer profile.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so important to really know what your ideal customer profile is. I mean, a lot of people, they really don't. They'll have some general ideas, but it won't be very well defined, which is why you want to do the voice of the buyer research, because you're going to learn all sorts of things. But when I start working with clients, I'll do an analysis of their LinkedIn networks and of their marketing databases. And I see this time and time again. Their marketing databases and their LinkedIn networks simply do not match their ideal customer profiles at a very high degree. Like in this case here, this is one of my clients. And when we started, like 20% matched the ideal customer profile. And that's okay, because like you think about it, when we're building things like a LinkedIn, network, right? Well, a lot of the times it's happening reactively or opportunistically. And again, it's not a bad thing, but it's like, oh, well, I started working with it. Maybe I went to a conference, and I met somebody at a trade show and we connected with each other. I got a couple of business cards, or maybe I had a client and, whatever, we started working with all sorts of different people in the organization and whatever, just so happened that we connected on LinkedIn. That's great. But what's crucially important is to deliberately build your network with people who match your ideal customer profile. And I don't want to sound superficial, but this is just the nature of business and the way business is done these days. Like in businesses that are very relationship driven, you have to start the relationship somehow, right? So start by building your network. And what's really interesting is that with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you can connect with 200 200 connections a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, like a lot of people, they buy the tool. Like I know so many people that buy LinkedIn Sales Navigator and never use it, right? And it's an expensive tool, like where the company will go out and they'll buy an enterprise license and people won't use it. It is the most valuable tool that you could possibly have, for building your network. It's just so crucially valuable and useful, because you can filter at a very granular level. Like you can find people who match your ideal customer profile very, very precisely. And then again, it depends on how you position yourself on LinkedIn, because you're going to then go out and you're going to, try to connect with them. And again, they're going to see things in your profile that are going to say, well, yeah, this person's relevant to me, or maybe they're not relevant to me. So it's all part of, again, it's your personal brand, right? The headline is what people see when you send them a connection request. So that headline is crucially important. I could spend an entire webinar just on headlines, but then the network size and the network quality. And when you do it, it will pay dividends for you for the rest of your career. Like that's the cool thing about building your LinkedIn network, is that regardless of where you work, like you may be a CEO and you have a run at a company and then whatever, then you go to another company. Well, you bring your network with you, right? You're a salesperson, you're an account manager. Well, that network comes with you. So that is an asset that you have for your career. And when you can tap into it, it's so valuable. It saves you so much time. And I can't stress enough just how important it is to build your network.
So, I mean, it sounds like you've answered the question, but I guess just for myself, is LinkedIn that important?
Yeah, I mean, this was crazy. So this came out of the research that we did, where buyers get information. And these are pharma buyers, biopharma buyers, right? Where do they get information? Well, you can see, a number of the sources here that we whatever were choices, but LinkedIn turned out to be absolutely the top choice. And what's really interesting is that I think LinkedIn has almost become like an aggregator of content, and again, like people use it for different things, like they're getting news from it and they're getting updates from their colleagues, but they're getting, thought leadership and other ideas from it. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be, peer-reviewed scientific journals, right? But they're going there, like every day people are going onto LinkedIn and they're, whatever, like a few times a day, maybe they're just scrolling through it and seeing what they see. And so, with that, in terms of your network building, the cool thing about like when you connect with people is that they have a much higher propensity to see your content, right? So this now starts to get into, building your brand. But when you have a large first degree network, they will see your content much more frequently, like much more frequently. And that's how you can, again, like we want to build that top of mind awareness, right? It's awareness and it's credibility. We want both of those. And the other thing we're going to see here is that, we want to provoke needs. We'll save that for later in the presentation here. But this is why LinkedIn is just so critically important.
Wow, that's very surprising for me, at least.
Yeah, it was. And the other thing that we asked, and this now gets into building your brand, right? But the importance of personal brand versus company brand for pharma buyers. So again, like, especially if you're like, I work with plenty of smaller companies that sell $1 million solutions, right? Like, I mean, they punch above their weight, and they are smart people, whatever. They're just very, very specialized, like they don't need to have like 500 people in their company. They can be 10 or 15 or 20 of specialists. And when it comes to that, like, and I find this with myself, like people really don't care what my company is, like I'm JK Research, and okay, great, right? But they care who I am. And we asked this question in the survey. I mean, the personal brand and the personal kind of credibility is just so crucially important. It's more important than the company brand. Now, when you work for a huge company, like whatever, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, then that's a different situation. Like, yeah, it's going to be the company brand that's probably going to outweigh your personal brand. But when you're in a smaller organization that's selling to a big company or a mid-sized company, like your personal brand carries a tremendous amount of weight. And the other thing that you'll see is that like on LinkedIn, for example, your personal posts will be shown probably 6 to 7 times more than your company posts.
Wow.
Because according to LinkedIn, like LinkedIn feels like, okay, well, if you're a company, then then you should pay for advertising, right? If you're a person, then we want to reward you for being a creator. So you create, they'll share your content. If you're a company, it's pay to play, baby. Yeah. So again, building your brand, it's so crucially important. So again, this is leading with your personal brand to pull through your company brand. And this is one of my clients, Ed McCarthy. And with Ed is an expert in sales coaching for pharma companies. Okay. I mean, he's been doing it for 20 years. He's got this amazing track record. He's brilliant at it. But people didn't know who he was and what he did, let alone his company. His company is called Echelon Performance. So when I started working with him, I said, look, people need to see your face, right? Like they need to put a name to the face. Putting a name to the face is incredibly helpful. And we want to position you as like the go-to expert, right? When it comes to pharmaceutical sales coaching, Ed McCarthy is the guy or life sciences, Ed McCarthy is the guy that you want to talk to. So like we are very deliberate about the way that we've designed his LinkedIn thumbnail, okay, for his posts. I mean, this is key. And we're publishing right now 3 times a week for Ed, right? So 3 times a week, like this image here is flashing up in front of people who are connected to him. Now, the other side of this is the relevance and the quality of the content that we're putting out. right? And it's all about, like, we did a deep dive into his buyers and really understanding the pain points of his buyers and how his expertise in sales coaching helps his buyers.
Mhm.
And we have just, a treasure trove of content now that we've created and that we put out on a regular basis. That's the other thing. So it's the quality of the content, it's the relevance of the content. And the one thing about relevance is that there's a timing component to it. Okay. So you can see here, this was back in October, but you can see the content that we're putting out in October for Ed. It's all around sort of like that Q4 push, right? Because his clients are in there, like it's finishing the year strong and then starting the new year fast, right? They're in that kind of strategy planning and budgeting motion. Like that's where their minds are at. So the
Mhm.
content that we want to create, we want that to sort of align with it, right? We don't want them to think, oh, well, this is nice, but that's not relevant to me right now. It's like, no, 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 no. This is about, building momentum, strategies for a strong Q4 push in pharma sales. Oh, well, I'm a pharmaceutical sales leader, and okay, yeah, I want that. So maybe this article's relevant to me.
Yeah, so I can see topics on strong Q4 push and year-end pressures.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you want to be consistent about it. So like I said, we publish 3 times a week for Ed.
Mhm.
And what's really cool though is that, the way that we it's all Ed's voice though. It's like we like I've gotten to know Ed. I know Ed. I know his solution set. I know the problems he solves. I know his customers. And when you have all that come together, you can create some great content that really resonates. And again, just
Uh,
yep. Sorry.
yeah, that,
Roger.
that puts you in a great position because in the mind of your client, you're already the expert.
Absolutely. And what we find, let's go back here for a second, is that, like, it happens with me because I do this exact same thing. Okay. Like, I mean, I eat my own cooking, and I'm so glad that I do because, whatever, I've got a very successful business, right? And I do it for my clients. Um, and yeah, it's just, and what I find, and my clients tell me this, when somebody ultimately says, hey, great, like, I mean, okay, I get it. You solve the problems that I have. I have a problem. I have a need. I know that you can solve it. So let's talk, right? I mean, I get, so many inbound leads now. Like, I mean, it's great. And when I have that first conversation, usually it's over a Zoom with a prospect, they think, you know what, I already know you. Like, they're coming to the table with a very high familiarity. Like, they know me, they've seen me, they've read my content, they've been to my website. Like, it's not a mystery. Like, they're coming to me now with a need. And what's so cool about that is that oftentimes I'm the only one they're coming to, because there aren't a lot of people that do what I do, right? There aren't a lot of people, like, I mean, there are a lot of people that kind of, I guess, can do sales coaching for pharma companies, but they've seen Ed and they know that Ed's the expert, right? Because Ed is like, he is like, whatever, putting his insights and his thought leadership out there regularly. And then they'll book a meeting with him, and Ed will tell me, it's like, whoa, like these people, they already know me, right? They know what I do. They kind of are coming to the table saying, hey, I see you do this, and I think I need this. And then that'll be more like, well, let's just back up a little bit and make sure here that, we're, it's like when you go to the doctor after you've seen a bunch of TV commercials for for a drug. Okay, let's just take a step back and make sure that, you're not, we're diagnosing the root cause and not a symptom.
Right.
But it's incredibly helpful, and it accelerates the sales cycle by months. So again, with that, this is another great feature in LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn newsletters. And again, like, this is one of those things, like, LinkedIn offers it, it's free. And what LinkedIn will do, like, if you publish content as a newsletter and you build up your subscriber base, LinkedIn will actually send an email alert. So again, like, you can publish content, you put it out there, on LinkedIn, it shows up in people's feeds you're connected to, and your subscribers will get an email alert. So I publish 3 LinkedIn newsletters. I have like 6,000 subscribers, publish, several times a week. And I know, like, people are getting that. And again, with what we're trying to do here, Marjorie, is it's this top of mind awareness, right?
Right.
We want it to be relevant, high quality, consistent, top of mind, expert. And when you can do that, now you can start to win before they buy. Make sense?
Makes sense. And I like that they're doing free email marketing for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. And the other thing, and you'll see, like with email marketing, like deliverability has become a huge challenge, but LinkedIn emails get delivered. Like that's another benefit here. I could spend an entire webinar on that. The other great thing are LinkedIn events. Again, very underutilized, amazing. So they make promotion of the event so easy. And like for Ed, like we did one for Ed, 350 people registered, 349. I mean, my clients, like they'll get 300 people registering for a webinar. Like for this webinar, I've got 150 people, and it's a very specialized audience. So again, if you take advantage, if you build your network with the right people, right, build sort of that regular awareness with them through your content, then you have the webinar. And the webinar is kind of like I think of it as a conversion event. So like we're going to send you this great content and educate you, and no strings attached. If you want to call me, hey, I'm here for you, right? We're not selling at all. And even in the webinars, we're not selling. But what we're really trying to do in the webinars is bring to life the opportunity, right? Much more explicitly. Kind of like what we're doing here. I mean, and people get a chance to see me and to see you and to see whatever. I have clients co-present with me. But it's really a chance to kind of, bring us even closer. Whatever. I mean, and if there's a need, then great. If there's not a need, then that's okay too. Like, maybe not now, but at some point. Because I built a network that's very relevant, right? So these events are incredible.
Yeah, webinars like we're doing right now can be a great means of provoking need. I can see that.
Absolutely. So that's the next thing, right? So now we're going to provoke needs. So again, like provoking needs, you think about that term, provoking needs, and it sounds like, oh my God, we're going to be aggressive now, and we're going to jam something down people's throats. And, there was a book that came out several years ago called The Challenger Sale. And it was sort of advocating for a more aggressive approach to selling, which again, probably has a time and a place, right? And we've evolved quite a bit. That was 15 years ago. But what you want to do is you want to, whatever, in the spirit of trying to help your client, help them understand, maybe where they have a need that they haven't acknowledged yet, or maybe they don't appreciate it, right? Unacknowledged or underappreciated need. Something that because this world is constantly changing, like in the pharma world, legal and regulatory is constantly changing. There are new discoveries that are constantly changing. There's a ton of innovation. And with that innovation comes opportunity to help your clients be more successful, right? And so as part of provoking the need, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to, help them understand, help them realize that, wow, like, I mean, even if you've done something a certain way for a long period of time, like there's always opportunity to kind of rethink it. And I see that in the marketing world. I mean, I'm a marketing pioneer. Like, I mean, I could tell stories about this, but I've seen all sorts of different cycles in marketing, right? Kind of like, the digital marketing cycle, the email marketing cycle, search engine optimization. Like I've seen this whole evolution of it. And marketing, whatever, like all that marketing stuff is great until everyone starts to do it, and then they start to abuse it, and then it doesn't work anymore. Right. So that's why you have to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's working. But in terms of, whatever provoking needs, it's like, hey, look, like helping people understand, like they're like this here, win before they buy. Right. I mean, if you don't get out in front and build your brand and build awareness and credibility, by the time they decide, okay, I have a need, I'm going to buy something, you're probably not going to get considered, and you're probably not going to get selected. And you may spend a lot of money trying to do it. So. And then with that, again, just staying omnipresent, right? I mean, this is funny. This is, the good old days. Like this is like my mom's phone in her apartment. My mom's 89 years old, and she still has this phone. And it's got big buttons on it, right? And but the bottom line is that you want to be on your client's speed dial. You want to be top of mind when they have it. When they have a need, right? Maybe you've provoked the need. Maybe they come to the realization. Like it's always most powerful when they come to their own realization that they have a problem. Then they reach out to you, right? And you want to be there for them. So again, that comes from doing everything that we just discussed. Grow a high quality network. Yeah, sorry, George.
Oh, I was just saying it makes sense. You want to be present but not pushy.
Yeah. Offer quality, provocative content, post consistently, offer quality, timely events, reach out thoughtfully, keep a helpful service oriented attitude, right?
Mhm.
You're there to help.
Mhm.
And if you're there to help, if you work in the best interest of your clients, then, usually only good things happen. Now, the one thing is that, and again, like you see, especially like with consultants, there's kind of like you go through this feast famine cycle where it's like, oh my God, like, I mean, I have no clients, okay, well, let me try to, market like, oh, okay, I'm going to email everybody. Maybe, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. But like the bottom line is that like you need consistent, effective marketing activity, right? Not sporadic, not like, oh my God, like I'm starving. What am I going to do? Well, let me hire a cold calling agency or an email blast agency and see what they can do for me. Like, no, that's not going to work. You need, especially in this industry, you need to build your brand, right? Consistency, quality,
Mhm.
relevance, all the
Mhm.
things that I discussed here
Mhm.
are just so critically important. But then when it's in place, it's amazing. It is a true asset for your business and for your career that will, whatever, pay dividends for as long as you want it to. So, whew, man, this has been terrific. Yeah, so just kind of again taking it back right to the buyer's journey, just really thinking about it and really understanding it is just so crucially important. Because when you understand it, then like I said, you can do something about it, right? Yeah. So
That was
with
so
that,
great, Dario. Yeah, thank you for sharing everything that you have shared. You're an expert in your field, and we have so much to learn from you. And so, if you're done for now, we can go to Q&A, or if you wanted to have any last words.
yeah, I think just last words. What I'd encourage people to do is you can scan this QR code here. That will take you to my Calendly, and you can book a 30-minute call with me. I'd love to any questions you have related to this webinar, any way that I can help you. I would be more than happy to have that conversation with you. But at the end of the day, again, it's remember these 5 things, right? To win before they buy. Understand your buyer, build your network, build your brand, provoke needs, and stay omnipresent.
Well,
Woo.
thank you so much, Dario. It's been a pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks, Marjorie. You've been awesome. All the best, everybody. Thank you.